Naomi Gleit, head of product here at Meta. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you for having me. I'm obviously a listener.
Yeah, I want to thank you for being a follower on Instagram, listener to the podcast. Yes. Actually, I was just joking around that it's a lot of pressure these days knowing all the Meta executives who are following us here at Mo News.
We're all big fans.
I want to note that as we have this conversation, I saw you speak and roll out some of the changes this week, and we'll get to that in a second. And I should note that naturally, I asked the community on Instagram, the Mo News community, for questions related to some of the things you've rolled out this week. So we'll be incorporating some of their messages and questions in this conversation.
That's awesome.
Before we get to some of the changes, I want to set the table here, start big picture here. You were one of the first employees here?
Yes, I started in 2005.
So do you know what number you were?
I think I might be number 28.
Number 28, employee number 28.
Yes, but actually the more interesting stat is I'm the longest tenured employee. So there's only one person who's been there longer than me, which is Mark.
Got it. So you've been here almost 2 decades now.
Yeah.
You were employee number 28.
Yes.
We're at 70,000-ish these days at Meta?
Yeah.
The company has grown. You have Instagram, you have Facebook, you have WhatsApp, you have all the VR stuff that you guys are up to.
Yes.
Take me back 20 years ago, this small team that you were a part of, and what you anticipated the impact or what the goals were for social media. At that time, it was just Facebook. And now looking back, what's most surprised you as you kind of take yourself back to Naomi 2005?
So Naomi 2005 was writing her thesis actually about Facebook, which at that time was only available at a few colleges. And
you had to have an EDU email address.
That's exactly .edu.
Yeah.
And so I was at Stanford and I saw everyone in my class using this new website called Facebook. At that time, it was www.thefacebook.com.
The Facebook. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
And I say this just to remind people of where we started because it was just a website. You had your name and a photo, and it was basically the digital equivalent of the physical Facebook. And then over time, I've just seen sort of the product that we're building really evolve. So what was once a website, then everyone had a smartphone. And so we were building Facebook, the app, the mobile app. And then everyone had a camera phone. So a phone that could take pictures, and we had uploading photos, and then it was a video camera uploading videos. And this has been the evolution of the product. And now we have a family of apps, which is not just Facebook, but Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp, and then our future services. So our Reality Labs product, like the glasses and Quest.
But in terms of impact, like the role of social media in society, you look back at it now, did you even anticipate like what role it plays? I mean, we're talking about, upwards of about 2 billion people using Instagram, like a quarter of humanity, a quarter of the earth is on this platform. In terms of its impact on culture and society and the news. Was there any sense that this could expand into that, or have you guys sort of just, watched as users have sort of dictated the experience?
I definitely think it exceeded any expectations. In the beginning, it was a college site. One of my first projects was to allow high school students on the site. It didn't even occur to me that we would, allow anybody with any email address and eventually any phone number and to use our products.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that hasn't been really surprising is we talked about the evolution of the product. It really has been about connecting people. And so to the extent that we were connecting college students and then high school students and then anyone, that has just sort of been a core human need. And that's why I think it's become so popular with so many people is like people use it to connect with their friends, and most people want to connect with their friends.
When did you, as you were overseeing and growing, first start to take into account what sort of impact this could have on our mental health and emotions? When did that first sort of hit the radar, and how have you, as a company, evolved how you approach that?
Yeah, I think one of the first things where I realized just the big scope and potential future of the product was when my grandma started using it. Because again, we were college students building a product for college students. And then all of a sudden, people of all different ages who spoke different languages, who lived in different countries started using the app. And so clearly the user base was much bigger and broader and different than the small group of people in one room coding this app.
Mhm.
Obviously, when it comes to mental health, that is a very important topic, a very complicated topic. And it's very important, especially for teens. And so I think, to get to what we're talking about today, a lot of the research on mental health points to this is a complicated topic. There are a lot of different variables. Teens are dealing with all different kinds of things today. And it really depends how teens are using social media. And so to bring it back to the announcement that we have, Teen Accounts is really focused on how can we help teens use social media for the amazing, positive, fun experiences that, I've been working there for 20 years. I wouldn't work there if I didn't think that social media could have so much benefits, yes, for everyone, but including and especially for teens.
So, you mentioned you guys were just coming out of college. It's always been a youth-oriented platform. But even the, founders, right? Even like Mark has multiple kids. You mentioned you were an aunt.
Yes.
And so now you're approaching it with that in mind.
Yes.
And so you made the big announcement this week about for teens, new safety protocols. Can you kind of take us through sort of the key elements there?
Sure. So you mentioned some of us are parents, some of our aunts and uncles.
Yeah.
Our approach with Teen Accounts is to listen to parents. We approach that because, much like Elisa said on your podcast, parents know their kids the best, and not every kid is the same. And so we wanted to align ourselves with parents, listen to their concerns. What are they telling us? The three biggest concerns that we hear from parents are around unwanted contact, inappropriate content, and how much time their teen is spending online. And so Teen Accounts is focused on addressing all three of those things. It puts teens in the safest, most protected settings. Specifically, it puts them in private accounts. It puts them in the strictest messaging settings. It puts them in the strictest content settings. And it also sets a lot of time management tools. So, for example, teens will now be in something called sleep mode. Mm-hmm. So all of their notifications get muted at night.
And they can't get out of that.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
For teens that are under 16, they will need to ask their parents for permission in order to get out of that. And so we've heard, again, from parents, from experts, from teens themselves, there really is a difference between teens that are, say, 13 and they're on social media, they're on Instagram for the first time, and older teens, 16, 17, they're going to college, they're driving a car, they're watching R-rated movies. And teens that are younger, early teens, need more involvement and support from their parents. And so at the same time, we're hearing from parents, they're super busy, they have a lot to manage. That's why these settings are on automatically by default for everyone under 18. But for people who are under 16, they need their parents to get out of it.
One piece of pushback that you guys have gotten is, what took so long? Why now? Why not years ago?
So I would say, and given my tenure at the company, we have been working on these tools for a very long time. We've built a lot of tools and features that support parents and help protect teens. In terms of what's different, what's happening now is that we've gotten feedback from parents that they could be simpler, they could be more standardized, and they want more functionality. And that's what I would say is really the evolution of what we've had today. And what we're offering now is this is a bundle. We are standardizing all of these settings. They are on by default, but now for the first time, you have to ask your parent in order to change a setting. That wasn't the case before. And it's a fundamental change because tens of millions of teens that are currently in public accounts will now have to be transitioned to private accounts unless their parents, allow them to stay public. One of the features of the teen accounts that's new also is all of the new parent supervision tools that we're offering. Mm-hmm. Now parents can see the messages. Not the actual content, but who the teens are.
Is there a reason that they can't see the actual messages versus just seeing who they're messaging?
In all of this, we're trying to find the balance. We're trying to find the balance between how do we let teens be teens and have their own privacy and be autonomous, and also giving parents more insight and more involvement. One of the things I want to call out is just that teens now have an incentive. If they want to change their settings, they're going to have to request their parents' permission and actually get their parent involved and turn on these parental supervision tools. But it is a balance. How much do we have parents, how much do we allow parents to have insight? Another place where we've sort of tried to to find the right balance is not just on like messages versus the content of the messages versus who they're messaging, but something like allowing them to see the content topics that their teens are choosing, but not actually see everything that they're seeing in their Instagram.
That's the question that came up, was the algorithm. It's an issue that's come up in the Kids Online Safety Act that Congress is debating here. What is the say of the algorithm, what the algorithm is offering up kids under 18? Because there's a lot of concern about the type of content and how quickly someone with a new account, regardless of age, very quickly is exposed to content that, can be dangerous depending on their state of mind and their where they're at.
Definitely, this is a big parental concern. Lots of concerns around the content. Teen Accounts is going to put teens in the strictest content setting. So backing up, the way that we think about content is we want teens to see age-appropriate content, and we don't want them to see inappropriate content. There is content that violates our community standards. That's content that we remove for everyone. That includes things like bullying and harassment. There's also content that we think, even if, it's allowed on the site, even if a teen's friend shares that, the teen should not be able to see that. And we remove that for teens. That includes things like, maybe sexual content.
So even if it's messaged to them in messages, somehow it'll be removed.
Sorry, in the feed. Even if it's content that
Yeah.
a friend shares in the feed, they won't be able to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you asked about the algorithm recommendations. We are not recommending to teens content that we don't think is appropriate. And that includes, again, the sexually suggestive content that's like drugs or smoking, people fighting, stuff about cosmetic procedures.
Cosmetic and body.
Exactly. That's just not content that we think teens should see, and definitely that we shouldn't be recommending.
In your research, is there a number? I was asked this by a number of parents. Like, how many hours should my 13-year-old? What is a safe amount of time for a 13-year-old, for a 16-year-old to be on Instagram?
So we don't know. And I think every teen's different. I think someone asked a version of this question to Dr. Pressman during the launch event too. And she was saying, it really is you as the parent know your teen best. That being said, daily limit will give teens a reminder after an hour to leave the app. Parents can change, that it could be anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours.
But 1 hour was just sort of chosen based on data, or just sort of?
Based on talking to parents and experts as well. I don't personally have the science behind that, but I think on average, that seemed like a good place to start. Again, it is adjustable.
One question I got this from a few different folks.
Oh, nice.
And this is a larger question, sort of philosophically. Why does Meta allow anyone under 18 on the platform? In terms of what we've been seeing recently about social media, teens' well-being. It's a larger conversation happening both in Washington. Jonathan Haidt's book, Anxious Generation, we had him on the podcast talking about it. Philosophically, has there ever been, as you guys discussed this, like, maybe we should just start Instagram at age 18 for folks?
So I definitely wouldn't be working here if I didn't think that Instagram could be incredibly helpful and positive for teens under 18 as well. You have to be 13 to use Instagram, and then teen accounts will apply to under 18-year-olds. But I mean, every day I am hearing from teens, from parents, about all the incredible things that Instagram offers to them in terms of connecting with friends and expressing themselves, finding out who they are at this formative time in their life. They're like looking at content. This is a new feature that we launched also to let teens pick topics that they're interested in. And so I do think it's really important that we give teens access to these tools, but at the same time, make sure that they are using these tools with the safety and protections and parental oversight that they need in order to use it responsibly.
You, I'm sure, saw the headlines over the summer with the Surgeon General's warning, basic comparing social media, effectively a warning that like they put out for cigarettes and other items. What was the reaction to that? What do you make of the Surgeon General's warning when it comes to social media and saying there should effectively be a warning label on it?
Obviously, we understand the concerns. At the end of the day, we are hearing these concerns. We're hearing them from parents. We're hearing them from the Surgeon General. And so Teen Accounts is directly responsive. One thing that the Surgeon General called out is, again, around parents' involvement and time limits on social media. And so to the extent that we are offering these time management tools, like daily limit, one thing, again, is sleep mode, 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. The Surgeon General is talking about prioritizing sleep. Jonathan Haidt has talked about prioritizing sleep as a critical time, especially for teens. turning off Instagram essentially at night is something that is responsive to these concerns.
Take me inside the room as you're talking to Mark Zuckerberg, to Adam Mosseri, to the leadership team here, as you weigh major changes at the company. Obviously, you're a private, you're a company, the business, the bottom line, profits, revenue, all that stuff matters. User experience, mental health also matter.
Yeah.
How do you weigh those items together as you, implement, as you discuss and then decide on changes to the platform like this one?
So in these meetings, in our discussions, our expectations are that teens may use Instagram less. And that's okay. We are really focused.
Which is bad for the bottom line?
Which is bad for the bottom line in the short term. But the goal here really is to align ourselves and listen to parents over the long term. And I think that is the approach. And over the long term, hopefully parents think that, we are responsive to them. And I've spent a lot of time talking to teens this week about the new teen accounts launch. Obviously, we were very concerned about what they would think. I saw a tweet that was along the lines of, my 14-year-old self is going to hate this, but my adult self is going to love this. But the more that I talk to teens, and as we start to roll out the product, it's currently live only for a small number of people, but it's rolling out over the next 6 months. We'll see what teens think.
To what extent did you involve teens in the process? And one question I got from a number of folks is, to what extent did you stress test this? Because we all know kids can be savvy and they can find holes in the system. How did you test this? And to what extent did you, test it on 13-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 17-year-olds, et cetera?
Yeah, so we have been talking to teens. We have been stress testing this. We've done a ton of focus groups. We're going to be rolling this out slowly so that we get feedback from teens, but we do want to roll this out over the next 2 months. Teens are obviously also very smart and savvy. They will find ways to work around this. That was one of the main points of feedback that we've been getting in the conversations that we've been having is, what about people who lie?
Well, right. You probably have millions of teens masquerading as 30-something-year-olds because they put in a different date already, and that's sort of cooked, right?
So for those teens, we are developing these AI classifiers. They are going to try to identify these teens that are lying and saying they're an adult. It's a difficult problem, but you can try to guess or predict who is an adult and who is a teen.
Based on their behavior, who they follow, sort of thing?
That's exactly right. Based on what's in their profile, based on the age of the other people that they're talking to, based on the content that they're looking at. All of these are signals. Sometimes we use natural language processing to try to understand the maturity of their writing style. These are just examples of things that we can use to develop this model to try to predict who is a teen and who isn't. Our goal is to get all teens, whether or not they've lied about their age, into teen accounts. We want them to have these private, settings and defaults. And I think that could really help here. And I don't know if we've talked about this before, is just helping get the age from the App Store. Apple and Google collect age. This is something that they could share with us and the 40 other apps that teens use a week, so that each of these individual apps don't have to age verify and collect this sensitive information like IDs individually.
Wait, so you're hoping that they do that at some point, as sort of the central clearinghouse? That was a question I wanted to get at, actually, is that, it struck me during the AI hearings earlier this year that you had a bunch of the AI companies say to Congress, regulate us. We need rules. To what extent is that the feeling here? As long as you give the same rules to us, to TikTok, to Snap, et cetera, we're cool with that. Congress getting more involved here.
We definitely want industry standards for the internet, and we are advocating for an app store solution. And in that solution, Apple and Google would provide age to developers so that we could use that age to put teens and age-appropriate experiences. In our case, we're building teen accounts. We want to put all the teens in it. We want to ask Apple, who has the age, is this a teen? If so, be able to put them in a teen account.
To what extent, talking about Congress here, I think there was one of the remarkable moments was when Mark was testifying earlier this year. The senator told him to stand up, turn around, and apologize to parents in the room. What sort of impact does that have? And just the fact that you guys are facing, admittedly, lawsuits, right? States are doing their own thing. Private citizens are doing their own thing. Congress is getting involved in. How much pressure are you feeling right now? And what is the impact of moments like that on, what happens the next day at Meta? Who's having the meeting, and how is it impacting sort of how you move forward?
So, as I said, it has been a series of years, many years working on these tools, and we are in for many months. And I know the timing seems somewhat suspect, but
literally, it was pointed out that the House is literally marking up a Kids Online Safety Act the day after you rolled out the changes.
That was totally coincidental.
Okay.
We really have been working on this for months. We started working on it over a year ago, actually, and so from my perspective, we have been working on this for years. We had this idea around how can we make this simpler? How can we make this more standardized? How could we add more functionality? And came up with the concept of this simpler bundle called Teen Accounts. And so I think what it highlights is that we have been listening to the concerns. To the extent that we've been listening to parents, oftentimes regulators are also listening to parents. And so to the extent we've been listening to parents, that is responsive to that. But really the guiding principle, the North Star here has been working with parents, listening to them, continuing to be responsive to their concerns.
With that in mind, here are a couple things I'm going to list for you, a couple suggestions and questions I got from people on Instagram. I have a teacher who asks, how about locking my students out between 7 a.m. and 3 p.m. every day during class hours?
Parents can do it. Now with Teen Accounts, parents can do that.
Up until 15.
Up until 15, that's right.
Okay.
But if you are a parent of an older teen, a 16 or 17-year-old, you can also turn on parent supervision for your older teen as well. And then you would be able to do that.
Speaking of parents and adults, a couple asked me, can I opt into these features? I need to be protected from myself. Is there a thought, based on how this goes, to of any age, those of us who, and I think a lot of people, there's an addictive nature to it. Have you thought about, enabling all of us to protect ourselves from too much time on the platform?
Yes. So I use these time management tools as well. These settings, daily limits, sleep mode, are also available to adults. They're not turned on by default. And so that is something, though, that all of the parents listening can go and set up for themselves.
And then I got a question. Parents who have kids with special needs, mental health issues, etc., is there an option at some point to keep this going beyond the age of 18 in sort of specific scenarios?
That does not exist today. However, the point of Teen Accounts is to get feedback back this and continue to iterate on it. I think this was a really big step forward, but we are hearing feedback like this. Some parents would like to extend supervision beyond 18. Some parents would, like more functionality in terms of seeing the message content. We're listening to this and hope to iterate on it.
And then finally, just as we talk about feedback, you talk about listening to people. How do people get a hold of Instagram? What's the hotline? Beyond DMing me their suggestions, of course, and me passing it along to you guys. Is there a feedback mechanism that'll allow you to continue to hear what's working, what's not working? And, inevitably, my 15-year-old figured out a way around your system.
So, one of the things I would suggest is we've been hosting a bunch of parent salons, Screen Smart events. And so I think we've actually done 13 in different cities all over the US. And I would really encourage parents that are interested to come to those events. And that's a great place to give us feedback.
And I learn about those how?
Would it be Instagram.com/teenaccounts?
That's where we can find out more about Teen Accounts.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank
Great.
you.
Well, thank you for the conversation,
so
and thanks for having us here at Meta.
Great.